And yes, we are live. I'm here with my new friend Hannah. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm looking forward to this chat.
Yeah, well, we met on Podmatch. That's where I'm meeting all kinds of weird and wonderful people, and I'm looking forward to meeting you and finding out what we have in common. My tags on Podmatch, are about religion, philosophy, and stuff like that. So I don't know that much about you, but what I like to do is have the guests go right back to early childhood and talk about the home life. Was there any faith, philosophy, any kind of sort of teaching that was in the home that influenced you, and then did you stray from that and find your own way? That's usually what happens. Just talk about that. If there was any, Christianity or religion, that would be exciting for me. But if there wasn't, just talk about what the atmosphere was like.
Yeah, okay, interesting. So, my parents were together until I was about 5 years old, and then they split at five. In what I can see now, maybe as an adult, was some sort of like last attempt to try to save the marriage. We actually became Mormon for about 6 months when I was very,
Oh.
very young. So that I have faint memories of that. And then I'll circle back, but like maybe 5 or 7 years later, I had moved to a different house with my dad, and um, one of the neighbors in our new house was somebody that attended the Mormon church that remembered us from like the 5 or 7 years before when we went for the few months, and so she, invited myself and my sister, and we went for a month or two when I was around 12. But outside of those two incidences, really my whole upbringing, other than an occasional like youth group type of thing that I would join with a friend just so I could go hang out with a friend. There was zero influence in that department for me. Like I have very, very few memories of my dad ever even discussing anything on the topic, but if there was ever anything, it was probably prompted by my own questions. And his answer was generally along the lines of like, just as atheist as you could get. Like there is nothing, you die, your body dies, like peace, that's it. And so I was like a hardcore, super rude atheist until I was a late teen. Like I was rigid about it. I did not like have any sort of filter about it for sure. And in
But
my
you're
late
much
teen
more
years,
you're much more moderate now that you've turned 20.
right. So when I was 19 and then again when I was 22, I experienced two very big losses. And then those two losses in my life kind of, the way I describe it is like it shattered everything to the point where when it came back together, it was bound to look completely different. You know, one of those kinds of totally rearrange your life moments. And both of those left me with more space to want more than what I had been believing in before. And so that kind of opened the door to spirituality for me. And then over the last 5 years or so, that's just kind of snowballed. And I definitely don't identify with any specific religion, but my relationship with God, and I mean, I read a lot of like old books that I find at thrift stores written in like the 30s and 40s from people writing about Christianity. And I read a lot of these kinds of texts and I'm very interested in it. But um, I'm pretty new to anything that would be more traditional.
So you're late 20s?
Yeah, so I'll be 27 soon.
Okay. You look very good. And
Thank you.
what's your ethnic background?
Very white. I think my actual like roots are like German and like British Isles.
Yeah, you
Mhm.
didn't do the DNA thing?
My sister did years ago, and it was majority. It was like 30% or something German, and then 25 or so was like UK, Ireland,
Yeah,
Scotland,
they give a
just
big
general.
blobby, they give big blobby results. Yeah, not very
Right,
specific,
and then the
but
rest was miscellaneous. Yeah.
oh, okay, no Jewish.
No, no, not at all. Actually, I didn't even meet my first Jewish person until I was an adult, as
Ah,
far as I knew, at least. Yeah.
ah, your
hmm
uh, your camera's a little bit patchy. I'm wondering if it's because of your internet signal. Do you generally have good internet?
Um, yeah, I do. I'm in a new space. I've only been here for a few weeks, and so I haven't run into any issues yet with the
Okay.
internet. But my my visuals are pretty clear, so
Okay.
I wonder if it'll be okay in the
It
recording.
buffers, yeah, it buffers. I think I'll blame the cat. So I'm gonna blame the cat because
Okay.
the cat's introducing dynamism. But it's fine. It's fine. Leave the cat there because it's
Okay.
cute.
Okay.
It's cute. How many cats do you have?
4.
Whoa, this is your favorite on your lap?
She's choosing me as her favorite right now.
Okay. So, you said you had one sister. Is that it for siblings?
Yeah, just one younger sister. She's a year and a half younger.
Ah, and so, without saying too much, what's her kind of journey? Is it similar to yours? How has she reacted to your journey and stuff you've gone through?
Definitely not similar to mine.
No?
She, um, I don't know how she would describe herself because her relationship with like God, spirituality, these kinds of beliefs and questions is much more, much less relevant to her consciously
Okay.
than it is to me. Like it's something I'm very passionate about. I'm interested in. I want to know this about people I meet. For her, it's just kind of a topic that doesn't even really get touched on. So I could say she's been fascinated. We could say that word by my journey, kind of like a WTF and also like a whoa, that's interesting, like both. And then also, I think as she's gotten older, she starts to get a little bit more like softened to hearing what I have to say. But she would probably put herself in like an atheist agnostic boat.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
you never called yourself an atheist, or you only went as far as agnostic, or what were your
No,
labels?
I like wanted atheist tattooed on my forehead, like not legit, but I was like loud and proud about it until I was probably like 18.
Oh, right. You said that. You mentioned that you went hardcore. Yeah, I forgot about that. So,
Yes.
yeah, I'm not 27, so my memory's not so good. But so yeah, I'm just wondering about the parents. Did they have they evolved or changed or whatever in terms of worldview?
Hmm.
Your dad sounded like he was a little bit hunkered down with his atheism. Are they both alive?
Yeah. They are both alive. My dad is definitely still what he would call an atheist, but um I do a lot of weird hippie spiritual things
Uh,
and I tell him about them in depth and he's always a little bit fascinated, a little bit. And like I think since he has had some losses, his dad passed in the last 10 years or so. I think he has also kind of softened a little bit to where he's open to hearing more things, but I wouldn't go as far as saying his beliefs have changed.
okay. And
Yeah.
so they don't really have a relationship. Your two biological parents, they don't really have a relationship.
No, they don't. I have a good relationship with both of them separately. They don't have a relationship together. But where I just moved to, my mom actually lives in this place as well in the same area. And so I haven't lived near her in the last few years. So this has been nice. And I imagine she would call herself a Christian. She like reads the Bible regularly. Yeah. So
Oh.
she kind of found that herself in her own journey
Ah, well, do me a
as an
favor.
adult.
Do me a favor. Invite her onto the podcast. Just give her my email address and say I'd like to talk to her. I don't talk exclusively with Christians. I talk to all kinds of people, and I enjoy meeting people. No matter what they believe, the most important
Hmm.
and exciting thing is that you are thirsty for the truth and seeking and whatever. That's the most exciting thing. If someone's
Hmm.
complacent, even if they're a Christian, if they're complacent and stagnating, that's not as exciting, obviously. But and it's
Hmm.
dangerous. It's dangerous for a Christian to stagnate. It's a very dangerous thing because if you're not moving forward, you're sliding backwards. And I've experienced that over the past few years with COVID. It really set me back. So
Mm.
you experienced loss. I'm assuming that's death of someone close to you. Is that right? Two people.
Yeah, one was a pet and then one was a person, and both of
Okay.
them were a couple years apart, and yeah, they were my
Oh,
first experience like that.
oh, was it a cat?
It was, yes,
Oh. So
yeah,
that's little baby steps into the trauma, I guess, when the cat dies. But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think about death often, and that's something I'll ask you again. I guess I'll ask you about it now since we're on the topic.
Hmm.
Do you have any hypotheses about what might happen? Beyond just becoming flower food or whatever.
Uh-huh. Sure. I have lots of ideas. I think about it a lot.
Okay.
So, I most definitely believe in reincarnation and past lives and future lives and all of that. Um, I believe in it so much so that it's like hard for me to even use those terms like past and future, because I really see it as hugely like multi-dimensional and it's all happening at once in like a almost sci-fi kind of a way. I think that we're just, naturally in our human form, our understanding of things is limited, period. Like of the universe, of whatever, because we are in this form. That's my personal interpretation. And so my best idea is that the essence, the energy, the spirit, whatever you want to call it, soul, whatever you want to call it, like the energy of that continues. And I think that where it continues it can vary, I imagine. I don't feel any rigid like I don't have any rigid image in my mind of like this is what heaven looks like or this is what an afterworld looks like. I don't have any idea of like a visual concept, but I definitely lean more towards like not really acknowledging something that someone would call hell, um, because I see our souls, as horrible as a life somebody could choose to live in human form, I personally see our souls as like redeemable no matter what. And so I imagine that we just return back to where we came from. And I don't think any of us came from hell. So that's my philosophy at the moment.
So I'm just wondering about, how many beings there are. Like, if you think that, reincarnation is the case, and Christians are not
Mm-hmm.
allowed to believe that, but I've met Christians who do. But it
Mm-hmm.
goes against the traditional teachings of the church, and it goes against, metaphysical teachings of philosophy and right reason, to be frank with you. But I'm just wondering how many beings you think there are. Are you one being, and your four cats are four other separate beings, and I'm a separate being, and yeah, like how many beings are there, or is there just one? Because it sounds like you're deep in the New Age, and I was deep in the New Age for decades. I was born and raised Protestant, and then became atheist at 14 when puberty hit, and started a
Mm-hmm.
dark adolescence, and I was atheist, hardcore atheist, and it got I went through all kinds of different things, pantheism or whatever, but agnosticism and different sorts of things. But I ended up being a hardcore sort of anti-Christian atheist near the end. But I converted to back to
Mm-hmm.
God in 2009 when I was 39 years of age. That was in
Mm-hmm.
2009. So yeah, can't remember why I was telling you that, but in any case, when it comes to reincarnation, I came to God through philosophy as an adult, and it's just philosophically untenable. But at one point, I believed that I was the only being. I was the disembodied mind of God. And if you looked at Eastern
Mm-hmm.
philosophies, if you looked at Buddhism or Hinduism or anything like that, there's this notion that this material world is illusion, Maya, and the other, this idea of other, is just a manifestation of the illusion. It's this separation is illusion, and there's just the one. So there's only the one. So do you buy into
Mm-hmm.
that Eastern thought?
I would say, like, if I just had to say yes or no, I would say yes. But I also think that there's like more nuance to it than just like we're separate in this human world and then like we're all the same thing outside of this world. I think that there is maybe some sort of hierarchy or like levels
Yeah,
to that.
yeah.
The way that a medium or somebody can communicate or connect with a spirit or a soul of somebody that was in a human form, but they're not anymore and they're talking to that soul specifically. Like I think that there's um, some truth to us existing separately outside of this realm,
Okay.
but I do definitely see us all like we're all sourced from the same thing as far as I am concerned. Yeah.
Is the source, as you call it, is that source um, subject to change and composed of parts, or is that source, uh, like my God, absolutely simple and eternal and unchanging and omnipotent, omniscient, and these sorts of things? How
Mm-hmm.
how do you see this source?
Yeah. So I see it. Probably the closest relatable thing would be like God, like the way that God is taught. So something that is unchanging everywhere all the time, like omnipotent, the whole thing. That is how I see like and I say source, but I say it all interchangeably. I say source, life, God, consciousness, whatever. I see it all as let's see, what's the word? Not black hole, that's not the word. But something that is like, I've heard it in very spiritual containers. I've heard it called like the womb of nothing, and then everything is birthed through that, and it's like the origin of creation. Whatever possible concept pops into somebody's mind, I would say is probably right, because we can't, I don't believe we can actually wrap our head around that as a human. But I do definitely lean towards the Eastern philosophy of like seeing that a particular expression of that source, that God, that creation energy, that consciousness, that unity consciousness, Christ consciousness in every single thing. And so that could be like the no other type of thing. I do recognize that.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the allure, obviously, of your worldview, and I also understand that everyone who's. I hope you don't find it insulting if I clump you in with the New Age. Some of my
No,
guests don't like that,
no.
but it's just because the thing about the New Age is that it's eclectic and it's everyone's cobbling together their own thing. So in a way that's attractive because you can just sort of go to the buffet of life and pick and choose, and follow your nose, and you follow your intuition, and seek the truth, and like I said, put together your worldview. It's a project that's exciting and fun and unique. Unlike the outsider's perspective on organized religion, they might look at it and just say that it's rigid and dogmatic, and it is. My favorite, one of my favorite aspects of
Mm,
Christianity is the dogmas. I love it. But there's to be fully alive and to be fully human and to be fully Christian, you have to go beyond the rigid dogmas, and you have to go beyond the legalism. And even Jesus said it's not the letter of the law. The letter of the law kills. It's the spirit of the law. So we need to break free even as Christians. So all of this to say, I'm sort of clumping you in with the New Age people, but there's where was I going with this now? I'll come to my question eventually, but for the time being, I guess I'll just ask you about what sort of brought you into the New Age, and I'll try to think about the question that I had in mind. Was it one
mhm.
particular book or one particular set of books, or was it an event, or what happened? Or is it just being in California?
Um, I mean, I did live in like the hippiest part of San Diego at the time, so that I was like going through what I call my awakening. So I'm sure that was part of the influence, but um, I would say it was kind of like my own data collection from my history in my childhood of like experiencing Mormonism at least for a chunk of months and realizing that's
Are you still there? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? See if it buffers on her side. Hello, hello. If you can hear me, Hannah, if you can hear me, you may need to hang up and rejoin the call. You can do that if you need to.
not interesting to me.
Oh, there, you're back. You're back. You're back. Okay. Yeah.
I'm back. I'm back. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes. It totally froze quite a while ago. So yeah, you're back now. So
Okay.
you probably have to restart that answer that you were giving. You just started when it froze. So. Oops, I think it froze again.
Oh no. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, well, someone in my live chat, Phil Gonzalez, says you're coming through fine. Everything seems to be coming through fine. So I'm not sure, but you are freezing. I
Okay.
mean, but you seem to be back now, so it seems to be okay.
Okay. So, long story short, to repeat what I said to start, is that through my limited exposure to different religions, Mormonism and then Catholic and Christian different churches that I'd attended with friends throughout my teenage years or whatever, um, I just knew that that wasn't where I was being called to look. I knew that that wasn't like there was no charge there for me. I wasn't oriented that way. And so I bought this book when I was, I want to say maybe 18, 17 or 18. This was before I started to wake up to different things. I bought this book called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, I think is his name. And I listened to it on Audible, and I couldn't even get through the first chapter because I was so triggered by this book. I was like, it wasn't even anything he was saying particularly, like the content. It was even just like the frequency of his voice. Like I
Ah,
couldn't tolerate it at that time. But for whatever reason, I was called to get that book then, you know. And then I had this huge loss, the first loss. And then for other reasons, not necessarily spiritual pursuit, but for other reasons, I wanted to start my own healing journey. And so I joined this 3-month long program, all focused on inner child healing. And one of the required readings in that book was The Untethered Soul. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm being brought back to this thing. I don't see that as a coincidence. And so I actually read it through, and I've read it many times since then. And that book just really made sense to me. Like everything it described as far as our souls and how we accumulate trauma or how we can get rid of it, and just kind of like a worldview through a soulful lens. It really made a lot of sense to me. And so my interest in those sorts of things started to grow. I started meditating, and I started working with all kinds of different alternative healers and spiritual teachers of different sorts. I started studying Tibetan Buddhism. I started studying different lineages of Tantra. Now, you know, years fast forward, I'm reading all of these old books about Christian history. So my interest keeps growing new roots and spreading out. But I think I chose more of a spiritual path over something more structured because my limited exposure before then just it wasn't what I thought felt ideal.
yeah, just so you know, I hope I mean I hope everyone knows, but I've met people that are a little bit confused about it. When it comes to Mormonism, it's it's firmly in the New Age camp, and it's not Christian. Okay, it's not Christian. It's New
Mm,
Age. You know,
mm-hmm.
it's very New Age. The beliefs,
Uh-huh.
if you examine the actual beliefs, it's like Gnostic sort of thing, and
Mm,
pantheistic and whatever. And the danger from a Christian perspective, from a monotheist perspective, the danger of the New Age is always that you conclude that you are God and that there's absolutely no danger. Like you said, there's no danger of hell.
uh-huh.
I sleep well at night, but I also believe that it's possible to go to hell. Like, I mean, that it's possible for me to end up in hell. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not allowed to despair. I'm not allowed to, think that I'm actually going there. I have to believe that we'll be saved, and I have to cooperate with the graces. But I also know that Satan fell from grace, even though he was a beautiful angel, and he fell from grace,
Mm-hmm.
and he's not going to get out of hell. That's what my church teaches me. And if I if I give sway to my passions or my lusts for food, sex, power, money, whatever it is, pleasure, repose, whatever it is, if I indulge myself in my flesh and my selfishness, I can end up in hell, So that's the danger. That's why I'm Christian and not New Age, because in the New Age, there is no danger. And so, what do you think about that perspective?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I have a lot of thoughts on this. Okay, so personally, I don't find, and this is definitely coming from like my therapy lens, my like trauma lens, trauma informed lens, is I don't personally see value or value that I choose in fear as a motivator. And so the idea that like I believe in natural consequence of like you
Yeah,
touch the stove, your hand gets burned because it's hot.
karma. Yeah,
But I think there's a very fine, I think there's a very, very fine line between like a natural consequence of something you do and like, you know, burning your hand on the hot stove. And so you naturally don't want to touch the stove because it's
yeah,
hot, and a concept that keeps you in line. You know,
yeah.
like the idea that if you do this, some consequence is going to be dealt to you that you want to avoid, that there isn't necessarily like
There isn't necessarily like those are the last words we heard. Hannah, can you hear me, Hannah? Can you hear me? Must be her internet connection. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Let's see. Maybe I'll what I'll do is I'll boot her off and we'll see. Hello, hello, hello. Hello. Hannah. Hannah. Okay, she's gone. She's gonna come back. Sorry about this, folks. I blame Satan. That's who I blame for this. Hannah, rejoin the call and we'll see if the connection is better, any better. Sorry about this. Will do if she makes it back on. Someone was asking, could you ask her if she's ever witnessed any preternatural occurrences? Yeah, that's when I was in the New Age. That's what brought me, sort of sobered me up. It brought me gradually to monotheism, was seeing some demonic stuff. I'm going to ask her about that. Let's hope she joins the call. Hannah. Hello, hello, hello. Do. So in the meantime, I have a couple other guests coming on today. There's a rock and roll drummer. She's part of, her name is Clementine or Clementina? Clementine. Clementine Moss. She's part of Led Zeppelin cover band, all girl band. I'm not really a huge Led Zeppelin fan, but it's pretty cool anyway. I'm looking forward to that. That's happening at 4. Hey! Did you lock the cats up?
No, she's been on the bed for a while. I don't know when she left me actually, but it's been a minute. Okay, so what I did do is I turned the Wi-Fi off and I connected it to my phone's like
There you go.
hotspot. So we'll see if that's any better.
Okay.
This is officially my first Wi-Fi issue in the last couple weeks with it. So I hope this
Okay.
resolves
Have you
that
done
completely.
other podcasts at this location?
I have, and I've done them on a number of different recording platforms other than Google. I haven't used Google yet.
Might be Google. Might be Google. Okay. So,
Maybe.
I can't remember what the last question was you were answering,
So
but
you were talking about
heaven and
like
hell.
how you kind of essentially find comfort in the fear of hell.
Yeah, can I just clarify? Can I just clarify briefly that the church teaches, and when I say the church, I mean the church that Christ built, and for me, that's the fullness of that is the Catholic Church, and the Catholic
Uh-huh.
Church teaches, the church teaches that fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. It's just the beginning, and it's not perfect. The reason to be good is for goodness sake. We have to be good out of a filial love, like I'm a son of a good father in heaven, and so
Mm-hmm.
that love has to be the most perfect motivator. Now
Mm-hmm.
it's good to fear the punishment if that's where you're at spiritually. That's where I'm at spiritually. I'm not advanced enough to just love God because he's infinitely lovable. Like
Mm.
I like the world and the pleasures of the world. So I need that fear to help me to get to the next stage, which is to be good for goodness sake and to love God. So I think it's important to recognize that my church is not unsophisticated when it comes to the spiritual journey, and it knows what's perfect and what's less perfect, but it also recognizes in the in the imperfect something that is good, you know. So we need to be careful of presumption where we say, well, yeah, of course God loves me, I'm going to go to heaven, no problem. And that's one danger. The other danger is, well, I'm a sinner and I'm worthy of hell, and you know, how could God permit me to stand before him, and all those sorts of things. So on either side there's
Hmm.
danger, and in the middle is love, and that's the challenge. It's not easy, you know, as you know.
Hmm.
It's not easy to
Yeah.
love.
So yeah, so based on your description of that, I suppose there's a lot of similarity in the way that you and I as individuals might be motivated to, you know, live a quote unquote right life or live in alignment with God, etc. Um, I suppose the difference is just kind of like the conceptual support of what it is that we're trying to do, where it sounds like yours is more external, um, and mine is more internal feeling to me. It's like I don't have a, a fear feeling that if I were to do something obviously wrong or bad or harmful or whatever, that I would be punished by something external. And it's also not even like a fear of karma, but it's like the inner reckoning. Like I want to be truly myself, motivated to live God's love in every way of my life. And if I do wrong, I have to deal with that. I'm the one that has the pain and suffering of being disconnected from God's love in that moment or through that choice or through that action. And so I guess my worldview is kind of that like heaven and hell are internal, and that I have the sovereign choice to kind of go to one or the other more often. And my agenda is to, you know, obviously go one direction.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize with you, in case it's not clear already, that the you know, because part of my podcast is getting to know other people, but also getting them to know me and my worldview, um,
Uh-huh.
without pushing it down anyone's throat. But you know, this idea of karma, it's something that I've always emphasized in my Christianity, because it's just cause and effect. It's just like you said, you put your
Hmm.
hand in the fire and you get burned. That's just the way. That's natural, you know. And of course, there's a
Hmm.
supernatural. I hope you agree, and I think you agree. There's a supernatural component to life. We have free will, right? Like we're not determined by the molecules bumping around. We're not determined. We're not slaves to that. We don't. There's no fate. You know, we have free will. We can decide, and we can shape our destiny. Now,
Hmm.
is our free will absolute? No, of course not. There are many constraints, many, but there is freedom there.
Hmm.
There is real freedom there. So I just want you to understand that, you know, my fear of hell is not that God is mean. You know, God is
Hmm.
infinitely lovable and good and merciful and infinitely happy too. You know, he's not some miserable guy in the clouds. But you know, I do have free will, and that freedom is itself the problem. You know, that is it's the gift, but it's also the curse, because it's subject to abuse. Like I can
Hmm.
choose wrongly, because evil is not a thing. There's no substance we could put under the microscope and I say, I found the evil in the world. No, everything is
Hmm.
ontologically good. Everything is good. Everything is good. It was created
Hmm.
by a good God. Everything is good. But it's the way that we do it. So I can use the surgeon's knife to murder someone, you know, to well, I was gonna say murder a baby, but I don't want to talk about abortion quite yet. Maybe we'll talk about that later. But the same surgeon's knife could be wielded for good, you know, to save someone's life or whatever. So
Hmm.
it's the way we choose, and what do we choose to do. But yeah, so I hope it's clear that you know, God is good, and our free will is good, but it's subject to abuse just by the very fact that
Hmm.
it is free. It really is free, and we can choose to be selfish. We could be short-sighted. So when it comes to
Hmm.
virtues and vices, virtues are good habits, vices are bad habits. Where are you at in terms of your journey? Are you pretty happy with your progress, or are there some vices you still struggle with, like laziness and gluttony, whatever? You don't look like it, but what are your
Thank you.
vices? What are your vices?
Yeah. So for a little bit of context, I did have in the past, I had a drinking problem for about 10 years. And then starting very, very young in high school, hardcore partying,
Wow,
and
really?
to the point where it was like a 12 pack in the morning by myself. Like
Wow.
it got very
What
extreme.
flavor of beer
Yes.
did you like?
Mexican beer. Like Corona, Modelo. Yeah. So I
Uh,
drank a lot until August 2020. So it's been a little more than 3 years since I've been sober. And then also just, a lot of other what I see as addictions that went along with that, like putting myself in disempowering dynamics where I was going to get attention in exchange for something. You know what I'm saying? Like just things that were not actually serving my soul. They were serving other things. And so those vices are a thing of the past. And so now, like, the things that do feel like the biggest struggles, they're kind of like, in contrast. I feel great about now. But I really appreciate when vices show up. And for me, they're usually something like procrastination or a desire for distraction. Like I'll notice myself, like I'll be trying to sit down and do something. And I'm like, oh, I just want to go watch that TV show that I've already seen before. Like just something that isn't actually going to give me anything, but it's going to pull me out of whatever I'm feeling in the moment. So I love the vices because I, for the most part, have enough conscious awareness to see them as close to real time as possible. And I use them as guideposts. I use them as signals of like, okay, I'm feeling off and I'm reaching for this thing. Why am I feeling off? And then I can turn internally and kind of deal with myself in that way and move from that energy into something else.
what are your, without bragging, what are your virtues that you're sort of good at? Right.
Definitely the self-awareness piece, like
Okay.
quick self-accountability.
Okay.
I don't let myself be oblivious to what I'm doing for too long. And my spiritual practice, however it shows up, it could be something more stillness oriented, prayer, meditation. It could be something more movement, taking care of my body. Like I prioritize that daily, whatever it feels like is the most needed.
Someone, my friend in the live chat's asking if you've ever witnessed anything preternatural, and from a Christian perspective, that's usually demonic, okay? Because we say supernatural
Mm-hmm.
for the good angels and stuff, but preternatural
Mm-hmm.
for the bad angels. I'm not quite sure.
Mm.
I'm not quite sure why that is. But when I was New Age atheist, it was witnessing some demonic stuff that was clearly demonic and that was not natural. It was preternatural.
Mm-hmm.
That really did sort of start me thinking about like, okay, whoa, what's going on? And I was taking for granted my worldview, and I started to think, well,
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot more layers to this, and there is a dark side, like there really is. So I'm just wondering if you have experienced that, and what effect it had on your worldview.
Yeah, absolutely. In a number of ways. So, I mean, just starting with early childhood, there was a lot of addiction around me. So I saw a lot of that, drug abuse, things like that. And then this hasn't been touched on yet, but my my history, my past, I spent starting at 16, I was very young, and this was a pivotal part of my whole journey. I spent almost 8 years in the sex industry, in the adult industry. And so that was very illuminating. A lot of darkness in that world. I do not condone it in any way, shape, or form, like at all now. But yeah, it's actually something I'm very passionate about fighting against, advocating against.
Good.
But it's extremely, extremely dark. And then in the more recent years, I went through a 2.5 year long practitioner, like teacher training with a specific to be trained in a specific lineage of Tibetan Buddhist Tantra. And the roots, the actual ancient wisdom, the teachings themselves are good, but the governmentally accredited like institution that I was seeking these teachings through was very, very, very corrupt. And I didn't learn that or truly see it clearly until the end when I did. And then there was this, like, I severed that relationship. But that was a very demonic feeling thing where the people in charge were really manipulating that ancient wisdom and those teachings to their own benefit for, abuse, power, manipulation, control. And a lot of the people in that program year after year were, it was like their first healing experience ever. So then they were like, this is it, this is the way. And I'm not that person. And so my questions and my pushback and my like seeing all these loopholes and things that are questionable and saying them was absolutely not tolerable to them. And so it broke a lot of things and it was super intense. And then that relationship, it took quite a few months to really like deal with the impact, similar to what you said of like, whoa, like my eyes have been open to like a whole new layer of darkness in this kind of like spiritual warfare in the world we're experiencing. And so it was eye-opening. And I would say the final statement on that is it has helped. I've gone the more, thankfully, the more like compassionate, empathetic route rather than allowing it to make me bitter and scared. I see it as something that just makes me feel more driven towards my own mission as a healer, as a therapist, because there's so much pain in the world. You know, darkness isn't perpetuated by healing, it's perpetuated by pain. And so I see it as something to just work towards.
Yeah, another, thank you for sharing that. Another demonic force in our world, you know, beyond pornography, prostitution, and these sorts of things. You did
Mm-hmm.
both of those?
So the prostitution, yes. The pornography, technically, yes. But I spent a week in Vegas to kind of dip my toe many, many years ago. And I didn't do anything sexual. So in the world of porn, what that means is non-sexual porn is super, super weird fetishes where they don't have anything to do with like nudity or genitals.
Okay.
So just off the wall, random things that you would never, ever think of. I did a week of that and then
Okay.
learned, wow, this is a horrible place and I never want to do this again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's another darkness in the world outside of the sexual stuff. Well, there's so many that we could talk about, but one of them is taking center stage these days in politics. It has to do with blurring the line between biological men, biological women. And,
Yeah.
you know, as a Christian, I'm firmly against that. I mean, I believe that men are men and women are women. Yeah, there's some men that are more effeminate than others and so on and so forth. That's fine. You know, I'm not the most macho
Hmm.
man and I don't want to be. I'm not, you know, I'm not attracted to the Ken and Barbies of the world. I'm attracted to people that are a little bit more mixed, you know, in terms of feminine,
Hmm.
masculine traits and qualities. But, you know,
Hmm.
that's quite different from saying that we could just switch it up. You know, it's quite it's quite a bold statement to say that you can change your sex or change your gender or whatever. So I'm just wondering how you
Yes.
respond to that, having having dipped your toe, as you say, into that demonic world of sex and perversion.
Yeah.
What do you think about all this transgender stuff? And you know, my love and respect to anyone that's going through that, you know, and that they sincerely believe whatever they believe. I have nothing but
Hmm.
compassion for these people, but it's wrong. You know, it's and they're being
Hmm.
manipulated. They're being manipulated too. That's the other problem, right? What do you think?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I'm so glad you brought it up. Yeah. So, and I had quite the pendulum swing too, because when I first started with that cult of a school that I had just mentioned, um, in the very beginning, well, I don't need to reflect on this whole thing, but part of their teachings, a core part of their teachings, on top of the teachings, they were like the lineage based teachings, not the actual tantra, but their school philosophies and things that they put on top of it. A lot of it was and they're Canadian, so a lot of
Oh
social
no
justice
way!
stuff.
No way!
Yes. A
Uh,
lot of it was very, very deeply rooted around like social justice things that are like hot topics. You know, a lot of anti-racist stuff to the point where it's past the point of helpful, and that's a whole different rabbit hole. And then all the transgender stuff, and I see it not. So I was like, yeah, everyone should be able to do their thing, and like I would get defensive in arguments with people like right away. You know, that signature trait when someone's like on that team and they don't even understand it, and then they just start yelling for no reason. Like that's where I was at. And then I started to question things and think a little bit more critically and learned a lot more. Went down a whole rabbit hole of like the medical birth industry, and that illuminated a lot about the transgender stuff. And it's all very tied, but I wholeheartedly disapprove of it. Like you said, I also piggyback on empathy for every single human being experiencing some sort of confusion or whatever, because they're still a human being, and that's who I am batting for, is humanity, you know. But like, I do not support it. at all, because at the most fundamental level of your being, like your DNA is male or female. And so no matter how much you like electively butcher your physical body, that never changes your genetic makeup. There is no possible reality where you become a different biological sex, and then to be asked or even required, demanded to acknowledge that somebody is something that they're not. I see it as a hugely harmful agenda to like disconnect us from our own intuition, our own perceptions, our own everything. And in the specific tantra that I've been trained in, the whole it's a Buddhist philosophy, so there's, you know, a little bit of a like, not necessarily, it's not tied to the Buddhist religion, but there's some of those teachings that kind of come in. It teaches that the body is God, or is an extension of God, and like is similar to maybe how other religions call like the body is a temple. Like it's something to be revered and protected and nourished and taken care of. And I do not understand whatsoever how somebody could be supporting like spiritual growth and connection to God while also supporting somebody to dismember themselves in the name of healing. Those two things just literally don't add up. And so I have hours of thoughts on this topic, and I'm very passionate about the protecting future generations from the impact of it.
Yeah. So, a friend of mine, thank you for that. A friend of mine's asking in the live chat if you've seen the movie Moonstruck. I think it's 1987 movie.
I have not.
Okay. Because apparently it has some messaging about love and relationships. So I don't know. I think I've seen that. Think I saw that real time back in the 80s, but because I lived through the 80s. But great decade. My favorite decade's the 70s, but in any case. What about your love life? Like to sort of, it is sort of adjacent to the topic, but I'm just curious. You must get a lot of guys chasing after you. Not all good guys either. Like a lot of horny guys. I'm sure your radar can pick up on who's a creep, right? But
Yeah.
how do you find a good guy, and how do you? I mean, I guess your worldview is you're not averse to sex before marriage, obviously, but I am. But so I guess you can test the waters that way. But like if it's a hit it and quit it kind of situation, you'll find it pretty fast, right? I don't condone that approach. You know, I think society should have nice families that are loving and supportive, and not arranged marriages, but like certainly some sort of like safe space where the girl, especially the daughters, I mean the guys, okay, that's a separate issue, but the daughters, like, I mean, they're so vulnerable to attack, like rape and, you know, and just being abused and just being used. And so how do you navigate all that?
Do you mean like my thoughts on the topics, or like in my
You,
personal life?
you, you.
Me. Okay.
Are you
Yeah.
married?
Yeah.
Are you married right now?
Ooh, drops with my pen. No, I am not married.
Okay.
I've never been married. I've never been engaged. But I am in a new relationship. We've been seeing each other we've made it official on Christmas. So it's been a couple of weeks, almost 3.
Okay.
And so it's very new. But I am not against sex before marriage.
Yeah.
However, I am a huge advocate for no casual sex. Like that doesn't even exist in my life. Like it's something I don't condone at all. And because from a tantra perspective, like I deeply understand the energetic exchange that's going on during sexual union. You know, it's a lot. It's not something that's casual at all. It's the deepest form of intimacy and connection you can have with another human being. And so I don't see that as something to take lightly whatsoever. I don't personally use the actual like legal point of marriage as like the threshold, but there is a pretty high threshold for me as far as like commitment and devotion and like monogamy and exclusivity and you know, check marks before that's a part of the relationship for sure. And so I feel pretty like what's the word, like impermeable, something like that, like
Impervious?
yeah, impervious. Like it can't even touch me. Men's faulty intentions. Like
No?
no, not at all. After almost a decade in an industry where that was the foundation of it, like I can see it from a mile away.
Okay.
And then as a therapist and all the like deep work that I do with people,
Okay.
I see it so fast when someone is coming from a place of pain or coming from a place of wanting to actually connect or are they seeking connection and just being horny because they don't have the tools to connect? Like, I see all of it really, really
Okay.
fast. And so I just deeply trust myself, and I know who to connect with or not. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
I move forward in that way.
How'd you meet this guy?
I met him on Bumble, and this is the very
What is
first
that?
time. It's a dating app, and this is the very first time I've ever used a dating app. So I made it the day that I got here. I just moved a few weeks ago, so I made the app, and I think we connected, like matched on the first day that I had my profile like up. And I had a handful of messages going on with different people, like a hey, hi, how are you? Where do you live? That kind of thing. A couple of guys had asked me out on dates, but this man specifically, his name is Josh, immediately it was like there was no mental rationale of like, oh, he's this, oh, I like this about his profile. It was like fully coming from my body, like from my heart. I was like, okay, I'm interested. And it viscerally felt like more heart centered than a rationale. And he just had something impressive in his bio, something that like really connected, resonant. And then he immediately asked to talk on the phone. And that was a huge green flag to me. That's every client I've ever helped with their dating life, I suggest and almost require that they do not go out with anyone they don't talk on the phone with first. And so he's the only guy that ever suggested
Old
it in a
school. What
number
is
of
he, 50
days.
years old? What the hell?
No, he's 31, but he is a true gentleman. And so I saw that from a mile away as well. And we talked on the phone for 4.5 hours. About halfway through that phone call, he asked me out on a date, like super formal and very kind of by the book feeling. We went out. I'd gone out on one other date with a guy, like a dinner date. And that was where I just affirmed that lesson. Like, I will never subject myself to finding out a person's like tone of voice, their demeanor, their like
Uh,
in person ever again.
oh,
So
oh, we watch a
got
show.
out of there.
My wife Anna and I, this is my wife Anna. Can you see? I don't know if
Uh-huh.
you can
Uh-huh.
see her or not.
Yeah, yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
she's Greek.
Yep.
She's Greek. We've been married 28 years. But we watched this show called First
Nice.
Dates, okay? And
Uh-huh.
yeah, we had an instant chemistry like when we met. I won't tell the story; it's too long. But instant chemistry. We got married like within a couple months of meeting each other. Okay,
Mm.
so
Mm-hmm.
instant chemistry, and it hasn't always been easy, obviously, but
Yeah.
it's the best thing ever happened to me.
Mm.
But why am I telling you about this? Oh yeah, because we watch First Dates, which is a show. It's like a British show where people go on blind dates, and I'm just thinking, why are they doing this to these people? Like, because like you said, you have to have, like, I mean,
Something.
as soon as you sit down with him, you already know. You already
Yes.
know, right? So you're gonna sit through this whole dinner, but
Yes.
when it does work, it's amazing. But it's just like I'm just cringing, like, oh no, no, no. And then they ask them
Mm-hmm.
at the end on camera. They ask them, "Oh, so are you guys romantically interested?" And I know the answer. I always know the answer every time. But
Right.
it's like, I guess it's entertaining. That's why they do it. But it makes me cringe when
Yeah.
because I can see the chemistry right away. Right? It's like so obvious.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But
Yeah. So like long story short, that date was chaotic. Like it was just not good. So got my Thai food, headed home, and called it a day. And then I canceled all of my other dates that I had for like the upcoming week, because that was all I needed of an experience to know that like, okay, I'm really looking forward to. So by the way, Josh asked me out to go on our first date on Christmas morning because it both worked for our schedules. And I was like, okay, I'm romantic enough to think like 50 years into the future, let's have family holiday parties for our anniversary. All right, I'm willing to risk the holiday. Let's do that.
well, his name is Jesus, right? You know that, right?
Yes. And in my mom's Bible, like the day after our first date, I didn't know it was her Bible because it's like blue and it doesn't look like a Bible. So I didn't know what it was. So I flipped it open and I was like, oh, it's a Bible. But I flipped it open to the beginning of the chapter and it said Joshua, like huge black print at the top of the page. And I was like, all right, God, I see ya.
How
Yeah.
be honest with us now. How good looking is Josh on a scale of 1 to 10? Just be honest.
Like my initial reaction, like his profile pictures or something.
No, now, right now, what you think now?
9.
Oh, wow. That's pretty good.
Uh-huh.
What does he give you?
Yeah. What would he rate me?
Yeah.
11.
Oh, is that legal? Yeah. So that's about right, though. I'm just wondering, like, what's the spiritual dimension to beauty? Because I'm attracted to beautiful people, and sometimes I feel
Mhm.
bad, but then I think, well, no, that's natural. Like that's
Yeah.
beauty. Beauty is health, right? So,
Hmm.
what's the spiritual component of beauty? Why does it matter?
I think it matters because, well, when you say beauty, I immediately think of like all forms. I'm picturing like flowers and like making your dinner plate look lovely and things like that, not just a human's
You don't
beauty.
take pictures at
But
dinner at the restaurant of your meal, do you? Tell me you don't do
no,
that.
I don't. I don't. I don't. No, I don't. No, I usually forget my phone. Yeah. But I think that beauty is valuable because sometimes it requires intention, either to curate or to appreciate. I think like it, yes, there's something that's very reactive about just like, oh, that thing's pretty and it like catches your eye,
Shiny
but to
object.
actually admire something, yeah, but like to actually admire something takes a little bit of conscious effort, takes a little bit of intention and like connection with how it makes you feel. And so I appreciate beauty because it connects us to our emotional experience. And as far as like dating goes, I do definitely support you having physical attraction. I think that's important, but it's definitely not the most important thing, and it's something I encourage people to be open about because you never know.
Yeah. Well, have you ever been excited by a homely man's inner beauty where you're like, oh my God, I had no idea how beautiful you really are? Have you experienced that?
Totally. Yep. And it could come through in a number of ways, like the way that they speak or their voice or like their physical mannerisms or how they contemplate a question or whatever. Like there's so many dimensions to a person beyond the surface. So I think it's
Yeah,
very possible. Yeah.
the flip side of that is disgusting where they have that perfect GQ beauty, and I'm just speaking from your female perspective, okay? I mean, just
Mhm.
imagine from my
Mhm.
perspective, the women, the bimbo blonde or whatever, and it's just like whatever. But the stereotypical
Mhm.
beauty, and then you realize this person's ugly, and it's so shallow, the beauty, and it's not even you can't even see the beauty anymore because you've seen through it. That's
Yep.
devastating. That's horrible.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And like I can speak from experience. I've definitely stayed in a relationship too long, like in the past, because of the physical connection. And not just sex, but like because, whatever
Looks good
story I
on
had
your
when I was
arm.
very young. Right. Like, oh, I'm not gonna find a boyfriend that's this hot, or like whatever the stupid narrative was. Like, it it almost creates like a resentment towards their attraction for me, where it's like this secret like I hate you for being so hot kind of thing because like it's the only thing keeping me here. And yeah, so that's no longer part of my
Yeah,
dating
you
process.
need substance. You need substance. You need to be fed by the human
Yeah.
being. And it's so tragic, because human beings are infinitely deep and interesting and mysterious. And so for
Yep.
someone to have ended up as an adult completely vacuous, I mean, this sounds mean to say, but for someone to be picture perfect and have the house, the car, and whatever, and the money and the looks, but to not have a soul. Like, I mean, it's just so tragic. And,
Yeah.
it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but like I said, there is heaven, there is hell, and some people are going to end up in hell, and some people are walking around on this planet who are empty inside. Like, I mean, it's just, I
Hmm.
don't want to sound judgmental again. I'm no saint, and I'm far from perfect, but I'm striving and I'm aware of my flaws and these sorts of things. But you meet people who are squeaky clean, perfect on the outside, but they're sort of vacuous. So I think
Hmm.
there's a really deep and dark spiritual side to that too.
Yeah, absolutely. The last person that I was seeing, we were seeing each other for about 6 weeks, and I ended things at that point because, I mean, there were a number of reasons, a number of small things added up, but one of the biggest red flags was, so my hair, you can see whatever color this is. I don't know what color you'd call it,
Sandy
but this is
blonde.
my natural hair color. Yeah. And I bleached it, like bleach platinum for like 12, 13 years. So this is like
Oh,
the first time it's been decently long and the natural color since I was like 12 years old. And
wow.
so a lot of my past pictures are like that. And then I also used to wear a lot of makeup, and I don't wear makeup now, like
Ah,
as a
wow.
personal protest to like
Ah.
disidentifying with that sort of
So you have zero
hypersexual
makeup
kind
on
of
right now?
zero. Well, I have colored chapstick on. Other than that, zero
Ah, I
makeup.
saw that. I saw that. I was gonna say that's not
I got
natural.
some colored Burt's Bees on here for us, but
Uh,
that's it.
this
But
episode this episode is brought to you by Burt's
sponsored
Bees.
by
I love this
you
stuff,
and
man.
me
I love
both.
it.
I love it too. And then they have a little bit of color if you want it, and it's like great, awesome. I feel complete now. Cool.
I don't need color. What are you talking about? So
So
anyway.
yeah, he would just often make comments about like, oh, you look so good in this picture, like, oh, I would be so happy if you ever dyed your hair again, like, oh, do you think you would do this again? This like very reaching, like succubus kind of energy about past versions of myself, solely based on my
Can you be
physical
16
appearance.
again, please? Can you be 16 for me, please?
Exactly. And I was like, ugh, like it was cringy. And so I just, yeah, I had to walk away from that fully. But um yeah, it's definitely like an addictive kind of a demonic sort of feeling, like trap for people to live in, where that's their priority, and it's just
You
really
never
sad to
got
me.
smacked around by a guy?
No, no, hell
Okay.
no. I was spanked a lot as a child. That was a big part of my childhood. And so um no, I think like even in a sexual way, if a guy tried to like spank me or something, I might accidentally like hit him back as a reflex. Like it's not a part of
Have you
my
taken
like
any martial arts?
no. Well, I did when I was really young, not anything that I could remember now, but my sister is very, very active in that herself.
Ah, what's her
Yeah.
beauty level on a scale of 1 to 11?
I would say 11. She's a very attractive
Ah,
person.
ah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
someone's asking about sex magic. It's like a
Uh-huh.
satanic thing. Aleister Crowley's one of the big names in that. Obviously, I don't approve of that, but have you had any experience or read about it, or did you see other people doing
Yeah.
it? Did you see other people? Have you met elites like these rich people that run the world allegedly and that have sex parties and stuff like that?
Uh-huh.
Is there any truth to these
Uh-huh.
conspiracies that these are a bunch of horny old men running the world?
I mean, yes, for sure.
Oh
For
yeah.
sure.
Oh
I
yeah.
would say there's truth to that.
Oh yeah.
Um, I would say I experienced it, yes, but on like a very small scale. I wasn't on like Epstein Island or anything we're talking about here, but like I even just the in the clientele that I had when I was in that world, in that industry, might fly me to Vegas or fly me to wherever to spend the weekend with them and their clan of old man friends, and they
Ooh.
just do whatever they want. And it's this very very distinct energy that they do whatever they want. And
Mhm.
it's like they have the money, they have the diplomacy, they have the like everything to do whatever they want. And so I think that even just maybe generationally, but also generationally plus power, plus money, plus connections, plus all these other layers, 100% makes that true. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
for sure.
I wanted to ask you because I have a controversial opinion about, it verges on blaming the victim. Okay, when it comes to, young women falling into the traps of these powerful men,
Uh-huh.
and I agree the
Uh-huh.
charisma is there, and there are all kinds of things they have to their advantage to wield this power. But if
Yeah.
they were well educated and a good wholesome family and whatever, they would say no to the first baby step that would land them in trouble. So, like, I mean, an example is these models who are doing, runways and photo shoots for these big agencies, and then it turned out that the guys at the top were getting favors, sexual favors.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there are other instances, in Hollywood, and if you want to have a career, then you kind of have to do what you have to do. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I don't want to blame the victim, but I always just turn to my wife and I ask her because she's a tough lady and men have tried to rape her before, she fought it off,
Mm-hmm.
which is very brave, and I think it's the only option. It's not, it's like you can't just go along because you want the raise, you want the job, or you want the contract or whatever. Like you can't do that. You have to have some principles, right? So,
Mm.
how do you feel about that? Like when you read a story about someone complaining how they were manipulated, and and this guy had sex with her
Hmm.
so many times and whatever. Do you agree with me
Hmm.
that, if she had been well educated and maybe had some more stronger character and integrity and principles, that she wouldn't have taken the baby steps that led to that? Am I being too hard on these
Yeah,
women or not? Like, just tell me.
I don't think you're being too hard on them. I think there's a lot more nuance to what you're saying that makes it sound more digestible.
Yeah,
But I agree with what you're saying, and like it's like a yes and feeling. Um, to summarize what you're saying in like an over dramatic way to make it like for the
uh,
point, it sounds kind of like you're saying if this person had a different life, wouldn't they have made a different choice?
yeah,
Well, probably, maybe, yeah, of
yeah,
course, you know.
yeah,
And so the way I see it is like I'm so like I said, I bat for team humanity. Like in my content and my work, like I work with men and women equally, and I really want to go as deep into their unique pain as I can. Like what typically plagues men that doesn't plague women and the reverse, so that I can really understand like what is the conditioning that we're working with here and how can we all come into unity, because there is no humanity without that part. It's not men versus women at the end of the day ever, or so everyone's losing. So I see it as like women in our culture are taught from a young age that their sex appeal and their sexuality is valuable. It could just be the Victoria's Secret commercial on TV or whatever. There's these seeds planted left and right that overvalue a woman's body and sex appeal, period. Um, However, it is only ever her choice, right? Like, I mean, other than somebody literally holding her down and raping her, like outside of that extreme, if it's like I'm gonna screw the boss for a raise kind of situation where she's leveraging her sexuality on purpose, that is only ever her choice. And we could even say fault. But I see the nuance in it that takes the fault off the table completely for me, where it's like maybe like for example my childhood that allowed me to step into that industry was a number of experiences that taught me in one way or another that my body wasn't actually something I was in control of at any point in time. Based on how somebody else felt, my body could experience something. I could be hit, I could have something ripped out of my hands. There was a lot of physical abuse that became normal, to where it's not like a one-time event that happened and it was different from my real life. It was my real life. And so the tone of my relationship to myself and others was like inherently disrespectful and lacking boundaries. And so of course the sex industry lined up. Like that's what I had been essentially groomed for through the abuse that I experienced. And so I think that if people are supported in from childhood in their own sovereignty and having their own boundaries, and like no, grandma doesn't need to kiss you on the mouth anymore because you don't want it, like even things as simple as that, like empowering children and teens and so on to really have the permission to set those boundaries, allows them to be empowered in not doing things that feel like compromise past the point of what they're actually comfortable with. But if a kid is constantly compromising past what they're comfortable with by force, then doing it by choice as an adult feels normal.
yeah. A friend of mine, thanks for sharing that. My friend Nicola Chrisick's in the live chat. He's asking sort of a silly question. Is sex more than just pleasure? Well, duh. Yeah. I mean, maybe he's just tuning in now, but I mean, we've talked a little bit about the spiritual aspect of that. You didn't say about the sex magic though, with the sort of
Yeah.
explicitly ritualistic thing, like, hey, do this thing and we get demonic power. Like, have you seen any evidence of that?
Yeah. So I see it just like many things where we can, manifest and create our dreams and whatever, where there's people with good intentions and people with not good intentions. And so I don't like the term sex magic. Like you'll never hear me use that term to talk about using sex as a way to deepen your spiritual connection. Like I see sex as a gateway to God. It can be with the right sacredness and reverence and like intention and all of these things, but it's not the same as I see a lot of people use it in almost like a like sacrifice the chicken kind of vibe, like where it's like we need to do this thing in order to get this thing, and it's very black magic-y, which to me the difference between like what we could call maybe good magic, like the magic of life, the wonder of God, and black magic that people are like trying to take into their own hands and create whatever, that black magic category to me is like things that don't have the highest good for all in mind. It's like, maybe I'm going to do some weird love spell sex ritual so that I can get my ex-boyfriend back. Is that actually what's best for everyone? Probably not. But if it's what I want and then I try to create it, like that's where I think it turns into something dark and demonic and not connected to like it's like the inversion, the negative connection to the creation power that we all have, and are, you know, an extension of. I think that there are times and places though to use sex and the power that it cultivates and the creation energy that it is, for expansion, but not necessarily to like, you know, do tricks.
Mm. My friend Risto, Christopher Rice, is in the live chat. He's asking about chemical birth control. You know, these pills we can take, whatever. Well, the one
Yeah,
women takes, I guess.
yeah,
What do you think about that? And what do you think about birth control generally? It's forbidden for us Christians. I mean, it's explicit in the Catholic faith that we can't use artificial birth control.
yeah,
But what do you think about that? And what do you think about masturbation? Because it's forbidden for us.
yeah. So um I think that people should be educated around their cycles and their rhythms and fertility and like how their bodies actually work. I think that everybody deserves to have a foundational understanding of that so that you can make conscious decisions as an adult without flailing at the consequences. You know, I think that you should know that you're only for, or not only, but like you're more fertile, most fertile during this window, and how to check that, how to know that. And like, um, so that you can be conscious about when you have sex and how you have sex. But I, so that you have some control and intention around your family creation. But I don't support birth control.
Oh.
Probably from a less like, we might have slightly different angles on it. Like it's not, I don't, it's not as rigid to me as like it's God's will.
Right, right.
But I see anything that's artificial in
Uh-huh.
that way as something that's disconnecting
Yeah,
us from the truth of life. And
yeah.
so I don't support the chemical interference at all.
What about
Yeah.
abortion? Have you been pregnant before?
So yeah, actually, and I'm open to speaking about this. So I've been pregnant 2 times. One time was about 5 years ago, and I had an abortion, and then the second time was a year and a half ago, and I had a miscarriage. And so very, very different experiences as well. With the first one, I was in a very toxic relationship. A lot of things were just really bad. I learned literally like the day after learning that I was pregnant, learned that the boyfriend I was with at the time had been, um, it feels like the simplest word is cheating, but it wasn't. Just a lot of lying and betrayal around drug use and a lot of things that I had no idea about. So it was kind of like the top of the relationship just sort of exploded all at the same time of learning about this pregnancy, and it was a very trial filled chapter. And then with the second pregnancy, it was completely different. One, because of the relationship that I was in. We'd been together for 2 years at this point, wanted children, like we're living together, like had
Uh-uh.
plans of everything.
Oh.
But it was an accidental pregnancy. And so like I think there were a lot of lessons I needed to learn through that about like really truly choosing it versus it just falling in my lap and then being like, yeah, let's have it. Because we both wanted it, we were both excited, but then I had a miscarriage, and it was some of the deepest and most unexpected grief that I've ever experienced. And I think it was kind of a completion cycle for me around the grief of that experience and the grief of the abortion. And so I don't really know. I have a number of perspectives on it. Like on one hand, I can get on board with the whole like coming from that more reincarnation lens of like soul contracts. We choose the life we have outside of our free will. Like, you know, we came here to experience XYZ, and that's like non-negotiable. I believe that to a certain degree. So I can get on board with the idea that like the soul that was attempting to incarnate and come through the woman's body, like maybe did it um, knowing how it was going to end, you know, knowing that their incarnation or attempt at it would only be 6 weeks long or 12 weeks long or whatever the thing is. So I do see that angle, but personally, after having both of those experiences, I would never have another abortion. personally, because the deepening of my relationship with God, the deepening of my like just spiritual connection in general, my clarity on wanting motherhood in my life, like all of those things make it a non-decision to me now. When it comes to the political side of things, I don't even really have a perspective anymore. I used to be super freedom fighter, like women should be able to choose, and I would get all pissed about it. But I'm such a hippie at this point that like, you know, it doesn't matter what the government says. Women have been having abortions for thousands of years. If you want to, there are herbal and natural ways to do it, and like, do you? But it's not something I would ever choose for those reasons.
Are you healthy enough to have babies in the future? Did the doctors give you the thumbs up?
I also have a very outside the box relationship with the
Uh-huh.
medical system
Well,
and
that's good.
pregnancy specifically.
That's good.
I intend to have a very wild pregnancy and free birth in the bathroom floor with my husband kind of a situation.
Live streamed on
But
YouTube.
right. So this might be a little bit explicit. I don't know. The two times that I did become pregnant were in both of those relationships. The only time, each of them, one time that I ever had sex with like complete possibility of
Okay.
child,
Yeah.
both times I ended up
So you're
pregnant. And
fertile.
so yeah, it's not a concern at this point.
But everything mechanically, everything's in place. Nothing's been scratched up too much by the implements of destruction.
No, and in the last 5 years, I have done a lot of womb healing, a lot of like, yeah, a deep sexual healing from my own past experiences, but also just like the ancestral line, the genetic programming of like women's bodies being abused, and like, yeah, so there's been a lot of healing through my system that has taken place, and I feel like my womb is a very happy place for a future baby to be.
So, yeah, I'm very happy and excited that you have such a wholesome view towards the family because it's under attack in society, as you know.
Yeah.
Um, I just had a good question for you. Oh yeah, about violence. You were
Hmm.
subject to violence, and but my question has more to do with sex and violence, how they go together, and it's connected with, one of my insights into this comes from serial
Hmm.
killers because they like to kill prostitutes often, and a lot of them were porn addicts, and they talk,
Hmm.
like I think it was Ted Bundy who talked very openly about how his porn addiction got darker and darker,
Hmm.
because you want to get a high, but you can't get high off the old stuff. You need some new stuff,
Yeah.
and that inevitably, I believe that when you go down the dark path of masturbation, porn, all that self-centered, selfish lust, I think
Hmm.
inevitably it leads to devastating violence. Do you concur?
Mm. I can't say I agree with that statement as a yes fully, but I
Yes,
am a
and
hard yes, and I am a strong advocate against anything that resembles violence being even remotely related to sex. And the entire world, pretty much, that is like kink, BDSM, that whole entire world, I am very, very, very disturbed by it. I don't support it at all. I don't like, especially people who are like trained therapists, somatic therapists, and things in that world who I just see so much like brainwashing and pain, where they're promoting and selling like what I see as sexual abuse as a way to heal from sexual abuse. Like, for example, something in the kink community that's a big thing, BDSM community, is like recreating your sexual trauma consensually, quote unquote, consensually, whatever that means, to like take your power back around it or something. But me as a somatic therapist, I have a deep understanding of how the body and the nervous system works. Just because my traumatized brain says, I want you to rape me because that's going to be empowering for me because I told you to do it, the body is still being raped. The body is still being abused. That's still a drastically negative impact. And so, like, the idea that anything violent towards the body could also be nurturing is ridiculous to me. I
yeah,
don't support the
yeah.
idea in any way. And yeah, I think my only disagreement is with the connection to masturbation.
Uh, you're pro masturbation. So,
I am pro conscious self pleasure. I'm not just pro masturbation of like just like as an outlet, like you're eating chips on the couch, like let me just go jerk off. Like, no, not at all. But Yeah.
Yeah. So were you actually touched or raped by a family member, or what happened?
No, it was all physical, non-sexual physical
Oh, okay,
abuse.
okay. Because you mentioned the whole rape scenario. You were just using hypothetical. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you seem very, very, very well adjusted. So yeah, it would be like a miraculous healing if that had been the case. But I'm glad it's
Thank
not the
you.
case I'm glad it's not the case for you. But you've dealt
Hmm.
with women who have, obviously, you have dealt with clients or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Has
Lots of.
anyone has anyone come close to being healed and well adjusted after that?
After.
Like as an adult, they can come to terms with it and get healthy and
Oh yeah.
oh
Hmm.
yeah,
Yep.
oh
Absolutely.
yeah,
Hmm.
you've seen it. Have you
Hmm.
seen it go from bad to good?
Uh-huh. Yep.
Oh yeah,
Totally.
oh yeah.
Hmm.
Oh wow.
Hmm. Hmm.
What's the
I mean,
what?
even just in my own life, like the contrast of, like, 10 years ago, I was gung ho about selling my body for whatever price point felt good at that point, because I was sold that it was empowering because I chose it. Like, all hoorah with all that distortion.
How much
And
was it,
then
by the
now
way? How much
it
was
would
it?
depend. It would depend on like the time and the place and the person and
Did
the
you have a
whatever,
pimp? Did you have a pimp?
No, 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 absolutely never.
Uh,
I'm way too much of a tyrant myself to have a pimp.
okay, that's good.
No, I was like, you might know what I'm talking about, like the kind of pocket of feminism that's like, women are empowered by putting themselves in the sex industry if they choose it, and they like even promote it, and it's like OnlyFans, get it, girl. Like that whole angle is just kind of disgusting to me, because it's women empowering women, quote unquote, empowering women to disempower themselves, and I just cannot like get that away from me, 10-foot pole kind of thing. Like I don't agree at all. But I did, a long time ago, and that's where I was coming from in my own self. That's how I was justifying staying doing what I was doing, while drinking every night and doing all these things to like numb out from the truth. And then now, like, I am more and more of a Puritan every day. So like,
Glad to hear it. Glad to hear it.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Recovery is possible.
Yeah, well, you seem very happy and healthy, and I don't agree with reincarnation and all that nonsense, or masturbation, but or sex
Yeah,
before marriage. But I mean, you're not Christian and you're not Catholic, so I'm not gonna like hold you to any standard or whatever. And I think you're doing
right.
great. I think you're doing amazing, and just keep
Thank
going,
you.
keep going.
Thank
You're
you.
so wholesome and healthy. My friend is asking. I want to give a shout out to Daniel Drazinovich and Nikola Krisick in the live chat here. Daniel's asking, this is another silly question. Do you identify sex with the sexual act? I don't know. I'm not sure what that means, but do you identify sex with the sexual act? Or is chastity a
Like, is
sexual
he?
phenomenon? Is chastity a sexual phenomenon? Okay. So he's asking about some sort of, like, do you have to have sex? I'm not sure what he's asking, but what do you think he's asking?
I mean, the first sentence when you said like, is sex a sexual act? Like, my first thought was like, does he mean like, are other things like a hand job or something? Is that considered sex in
Oh,
my mind? Like, is that what he's asking?
what do you think? Well, what do you say to that?
I mean, I think that there are differences for sure between sexual intercourse and other forms of sex, just
Yeah.
even energetically in our bodies. But yeah, it's all sex. If it has to do with the genitals, it's all sex.
Okay, okay. And is chastity a sexual phenomenon? Well, from a Catholic perspective, I want to have full disclosure here and tell you that from my perspective as a Catholic, and I do have a sort of radical view on it, but I think it's the Catholic view. Sex is good and pure and holy and chaste always,
Hmm.
but a lot of the
Hmm.
stuff that people in society are calling sex is not really sex at all. It's just masturbation. So you can masturbate into
Mm,
any orifice of any creature, like your dog, your cow,
mm,
your wife, and you could be from all appearances, a nice Catholic family, but you're still not having sex with your wife. You're just masturbating into her because it's all about your attitude, right? That's what it's
mm,
about. It's the
hmm.
heart. It's the heart that will determine, are you having sex or are
Yeah.
you just masturbating into a person? So,
Hmm.
do you agree with it? I mean, you're not Catholic, but do you think that there's some sense to that whatsoever?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe the different terminology that I would probably use is like, there's a difference between sacred sex, what I consider like the ultimate truth of sex to be,
Yeah.
and sex as an outlet for something else. some sort of relief or stress relief, or like, something that's not an actual connection,
Or
but it's just simply,
power over domination and stuff like that. Because the whole
yes,
rape fantasy thing.
yeah,
When I'm plagued by lust, and I am sometimes, I can feel the demons that come into me, and they just give me these images and stuff, and it is dark, and I'm not proud of it, but it's like there's a certain pleasure I get from these dark fantasies, and I know it's demonic, and I know it's not a real pleasure. It's sick and demonic, like just to
hmm
entertain. Like I get presented with these images because I've been since adolescence, like was introduced to porn early, and so it's just like this
hmm
sick thing, and it's not
yeah,
healthy. It's not healthy at all. But I'm just letting you know there's a dark side to it, and even me, like good Christian or whatever, like I mean, there's this idea of domination, and like I mean, in my real life,
hmm
I'm very prudish, obviously, in real life, but in my head, in my fantasies, and
hmm
even my sexual dreams, often is dark and demonic, and it involves power over the other. So I think that
hmm
domination and that sort of thing is. Do women are men and women different in that way when it comes to the?
I think that in a very like general, like to categorize for the sake of ease kind of thing, yes, because we experience different general conditioning culturally, societally, in our families as a man versus being a woman. But um, so this is my take on it, versus it being something that's like a demonic force coming from like some other place. I see those sort of dark sexual like fantasies or desires or thoughts or even actions as like the last stop on the list, the last train stop for trauma to go. So it's like if some point in our lives we have been deeply disempowered, we felt like we were out of control, we felt like someone else was in charge of us, like we were the victim to something, then eventually when that's never processed and like witnessed and seen and met with compassion and liberated and alchemized into your power back, then eventually it comes out in the darkest place, which is our the shadow side of our sexuality. And so I see all of that sort of like what you're calling demonic to be like the sexual shadow, and to me all of that is like some expression of unhealed trauma, and that's my lens. And so um it's interesting because I can think of my own journey. I was exposed to porn very young. I was maybe 12 or 13. And then I watched a lot of porn when I was in my teenage years, like 16, 17. And the things that I would be the most drawn to at that time were very much power dynamic type of things where the woman was being disempowered, like clear as day, where she was like not in power, not in control, because there was this sort of like eroticized, fetishized thing that was going on because I had felt so disempowered for so long, having a father, basically me, my main caregiver, who was abusive and didn't have a huge emotional capacity. Like the pain of feeling like the victim eventually came out in that way where I was like eroticizing it. And so now when I think about my like what I would call sexual fantasy, it doesn't even feel true to say sexual fantasy because it doesn't feel like something that I have to like leave my reality for.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's fantasy and reality is like wholesome purity, God in the bedroom. Like I daydream about that, And so I 100% like through my own embodiment believe that those types of fantasies that might even feel like disturbing, that there's value in them because they point to things that we might need to look at. I don't think they should be acted on, but I think that they can absolutely be transformed into something else useful.
yeah, yeah, yeah. My friend Pootis Bird is in the live chat. He's asking. He's a young guy, 15 years old. So watch what you say. He just showed up. Anyway, I'm just being silly. You can say what you want to say. Say what you want to say. But he's asking, does she believe in that Buddhist thought? Well, we've already covered this Pootis Bird, but somewhat she's sympathetic to the Buddhist thought, and yeah. I mean, if you want
Meaning
to
what?
give a little
Reincarnation?
you want to give a little summary to my friend here about your
Yeah.
Buddhist
So
leanings.
my Buddhist leanings are that the body can be treated as an extension of God, a vessel of God, where all of the wisdom, power, knowledge that we need is innately in our human form, like imbued by God and life, and it's all connected. And that our purpose as a human in this current lifetime is to like essentially uncover, unlock, connect, unleash all of that God power within, and through, you know, living our sacred purpose and living our right lives and healing our body and taking care of things. And I believe in reincarnation, where it's like, I kind of see it, this is very simplistic, but I kind of see it as like, however much work you didn't get done, you'll come back and do it next time, kind of a thing. You'll pick up where you left off, is how I see it in a very simple terms.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about that. You know, in my Catholic Christian worldview, there's a beginning of creation and an end of creation, okay? So it's like
Mm-hmm.
all the stuff happened, all the drama happens in between. You know, there's the fall and then all the war and disease and death and sin and everything. And it's you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's a nasty fallen world that we live in, but you know, the God man died for our sins, and so there's hope for salvation, these sort of things. Okay, so basically
Mm-hmm.
there's salvation history, bang, beginning, end. But from your point
Yep.
of view, you only have well, you have three options. You can opt into, yeah, there's a beginning, yeah, there's an end, and all the stuff, drama happens in between with your reincarnation, whatever you want to believe. Or you can say,
Mm-hmm.
well, it's an infinite chain of, you know, infinite lives, infinite beings. Or you can say, well, it's all just illusion. There's just the one mind of God. And I did ask you this at the beginning of the interview, but you said,
Yeah.
well, it's there's a hierarchical thing, and it's not really easy to explain. But if I asked you to commit to one of the three views, where there's a beginning, clear beginning and an end, or there's no beginning, no end, it's just infinite, or it's all just illusion, and the ultimate reality is the one mind of God. Which way are you leaning, given those three rigid options?
Yeah, I would definitely say option three is the one I would go with
Okay.
rigidly if I had to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where I
And,
see this as like an experiment.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's you know, I did believe I was a hard solipsist. I believed I was the only being in the universe back in 2009
Mm-hmm.
before I converted. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a very lonely place to be, and obviously,
Mm.
um, but you know, I've experienced sort of the Eastern mysticism in that way. You know, it was very dark and heavy. And then I came to God, and I understand that creation is real, and all of salvation history, time has a beginning and an end, and there's a whole story and these sorts of things. Okay, so but you know, now that I'm Christian, because of what I went through with my hard solipsism, I'm very sympathetic to Buddhism and these Eastern religions, and to what's
Mm-hmm.
technically called monism, where there's only one thing, and it's God. You know, so
Mm-hmm.
the only reality is God, heaven, whatever you want to call it, or the source, whatever you want to
Mm-hmm.
call it. So I'm very sympathetic to that. Um, but you know, the way that I think about it, because there's this idea of theosis. I don't know if you've heard about this. Theosis is like
Mm.
we are destined to enter into the life of God. You know, so your worldview and
Mm.
mine aren't that different. There are
Mm-hmm.
very, very important differences, but there's a significant overlap in terms of like the ultimate reality and the ultimate destiny is enjoying the life of God. So I just wanted to
Mm-hmm.
share that with you. It's not really a question, but
Mm-hmm. I
more of a
find that fascinating. I find that very fascinating because like um perspective is everything, you know, like it is everything. Like you saying you can relate to me choosing that third option because of your past beliefs and experiences, and those feeling like dark and dense and lonely, and then me you know,
yeah.
assuming we're talking about the same thing, like
Yeah.
me finding quite the opposite in that experience of like, this feels liberating, this feels free, and this is so bright and light because I am connected to everything and it makes me love my neighbor more and like all these other thoughts that are like coming from the same thing. It's funny.
Yeah, yeah, forgive me for being morose. It's just my nature. That's my nature. But and I am, you know, I'm a little bit dark and grim. Like, I mean, that's just reality, and I have unhealed trauma. Obviously, I've got unhealed trauma from my childhood, and I don't think I'm going to be able to sort it out. I can't afford to pay you to fix me, so I guess just going to suffer through it. My friend is asking about virginity. What about the Virgin Mary? Was she a sexual person? Well, I mean, I subscribe to nuptial mysticism where, you know, the encounter with God is the ultimate orgasmic sexual thing. Like that intimacy is, you know, that's where it's at, and the shadow of that here below, we have sex, we have family, we have intimacy with our wife or husband, whatever it is, and that's a
Hmm.
shadow. It's good, it's real, and it's wonderful and it's mysterious, but it's only a shadow, pale shadow of what's to come in heaven. I always tell
Hmm.
my atheist friends make fun of me, and I just say, well, look, all the sex, drugs, and rock and roll is in heaven. It's not in hell. It's up in heaven. Okay, so we don't understand. It's mysterious. God is a mystery, as you said earlier. God is a mystery. We're not going to comprehend God, but we can apprehend God. We can
Hmm.
bump into God. We can talk to God. And we can have a relationship with God. But He remains a mystery.
Hmm.
But one part, I firmly believe and I firmly emphasize the sort of like intimacy aspect of our relationship with God. We are the bride of Christ. It's like we are
Hmm.
female, we're feminine with respect to Christ. And so like we have to be receptive and passive, and it's
Hmm.
like there's a big controversy in the Catholic Church now. I'm not sure if you're aware of it, probably not. But there's a big controversy because of the sexual topics that are in the culture, and the church is responding as a mother, responding with care for those who are perverted and mentally ill, and
Hmm.
offering blessings and offering support and teachings and welcoming people into the church, even though they're wounded. Because I'm wounded, but I
Hmm.
was welcomed into the church. And you don't have to
Hmm.
be a saint to enter the church. It's a hospital for sinners, not a museum for saints. But my whole point here
Hmm.
is that with this recent controversy over sexuality and even the same-sex couples, whatever it is,
Hmm.
there are some documents coming to light that the right-wing Catholics are all upset about because it's talking in very sexual terms about our relationship with God. But I embrace that,
Hmm.
like intuitively. I know that that's where it's at. So I'll let you respond to all that. I give you a lot to think about there.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like you said, you gave me a lot to think about. I could summarize it with maybe the word like ditto or something. Yeah, I wish I could remember. I'm gonna butcher it if I try to remember. I don't want to pull it up on my phone. But I saw this like meme, like just a quote picture with words on it on Instagram the other day. And this is different because it was talking about planet Earth, not God, but same premise. It was saying something along the lines of like, when we are able to transition or expand our mindset and relationship with the planet from Mother Earth to Lover Earth, it does something different for us. It serves us in a different way, and it requires that all of humanity grows up. And so I really liked that, and I feel some similarity with what you just said. Like there there like if God is everything, then God is everything. Period. He is your guide, he is your leader, he is your teacher, he is your lover. Like that's not an archetype that's taken off the table just because he's God and we've made it mean something weird. Like I think that it is very much an innate part of a godly expression to include intimacy. It's part of our human body. We weren't made in his image on accident given sex. Like it's a thing. It's intrinsic to our nature and our connection with God. And so I am probably more on board than not with the languaging you're talking about whatever upset some people.
I'm gonna read you something from the Book of Tobit, which is a lesser known book because it's part of the Deuterocanonical books, or what the Protestants call the Apocrypha. Okay,
Mm,
it's a prayer that was prayed by this young couple. Okay, they were cousins and they sort of had a partially arranged marriage, but it's just a beautiful prayer that they say before they consummate the marriage. I just want to get your reaction to it. Okay.
uh-huh.
They say, "Blessed are you, O God of our ancestors. Blessed be your name forever and ever. Let the heavens and all your creation bless you forever. You made Adam, you made his wife Eve to be his helper and support, and from these two the human race has come. You said, it is not good for the man to be alone. Let us make him a helper like himself. Now, not with lust, but with fidelity, I take this kinswoman as my wife. Send down your mercy on me and on her, and grant that we may grow old together. Bless us with children." And together they said, "Amen, amen," and they went to bed for the night. So, what do you think about that little prayer?
I like it. I like it. The questions that pop up in my head are around specifically the Adam and Eve part. That's something I've been a little bit more a little bit more curious about lately, like just my
Ah.
own thoughts and concepts on the story of it, like what it means and
What do you believe in
whatever.
evolution? Do you believe that we evolved from fish and apes and all those rats and all those creatures?
I definitely believe in evolution as something that like is real. But I don't, well, for one, I don't think I have enough like actual information in my head to be like, oh yeah, that's the thing I believe in about where we came from. Um, I guess I tend to lean more towards where we're supposed to be headed than where, like, as far as my interest, than where we came from. Um, so I don't think about it very much, but I don't believe that we just plopped out as humans. I think. I don't know. It could change tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, just so you know, full disclosure, I'm a young Earth creationist. I think the whole universe began like 7,000, 8,000 years ago, and it was just like described in Genesis. It's like, bang, here you are, you're in the garden. You know, day 1 through 6 was like God's creating all these things, and so that this is the minority position today. Sadly, in the Catholic Church, I'm in the minority, and people think I'm silly. But that's what I believe, you know, because of the dogmas of the church, and just because of the thoughts and my thoughts and prayers have led me to that conclusion. And even when I was an
Yeah.
atheist, I never believed that I was an ape. I never believed that we evolved from apes. I don't believe that. Why would I
Yeah.
choose to believe that? You know what I mean? I'm more than that, right?
Yeah. I yeah, like I definitely believe in, like, genetic mutation as a thing. Like that's something we can see in
Yeah, of
real
course,
time
of
between
course,
one
of course.
generation to the
Of
next.
course, of course.
But also from like a totally wild, like, I mean, wild to this conversation, maybe like galactic perspective, with the idea that our souls like extend and can like inhabit things way beyond this universe, multiverse, like all these other huge expansive thoughts. I believe in that to a certain degree, and I think that it's not a far-fetched idea. Now that I'm saying it, I backtrack what I said earlier. It's not a totally far-fetched idea to me to think that the form of a human was something that like existed right out the gate, because I also believe that a lot of other weird things exist. So without needing to know their evolutionary story. So yeah.
I just realized it's 3:45. I got an interview at 4, so I didn't realize I've been taking up like an hour and
Ah,
40 minutes of your time here. So I'm gonna let you go. I have to let you go. I wouldn't let you go, but I have to.
okay.
And I hope you come back. It's been like such a joy to meet you, and I hope you'll pray for me, whatever that means for you. I've enrolled you in a
Yep.
perpetual mass, okay? But I've
Awesome.
got a ton more questions, so I hope you come back. And do me a favor, ask your mom if it's okay. Ask her if she'll email me if she's interested in coming and chatting. And
Huh.
we're not going to talk about you. We're going to talk about her and her faith
Mhm.
and her journey. You know.
Mhm. Mhm.
And Josh, I mean, if he's willing to come and talk to me, again, we're not going to talk about you. We're going to talk about him. And I want to rate his
Yeah.
beauty. I want to rate his beauty on a scale of 1 to 10 to see if you got it right. So just invite them.
I would love that.
I always ask people to invite others on, and it very rarely happens. Okay, but I just throw it out there, and sometimes it works.
Uh-huh.
So
I would love to hear his thoughts. So I'm gonna
yeah,
encourage that.
yeah,
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah.
So it was a joy to meet you, and keep in touch, and I'll see you around, and I'll invite you back maybe in 6 months or something like that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having
God
me.
bless
We'll be in
you.
touch for sure.
Take care.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye.